So it's time that I start connecting some of the dots. The last few videos have all been leading up to this overarching hypothesis, I guess I can call it. And that hypothesis is this goes within cancel culture, it goes in with all the ideological talk about the identity politics left and whatnot. And that hypothesis can be outlined, well, in order to be a proper hypothesis, it also needs a null value, meaning that it can be proven false. Unlike the claims that the left are proposing. And I don't know that I can call them left. I'm just going to call them identitarians because I don't know what else to call them. Or Marxists, I guess you could call them. And that is to couple things together. So my hypothesis is the identitarian left is a ideological secular religion with values, tenets, and morals equivalent to the dogmatic principles of other religions. And the opposite is to say that they're not a religion and they do not have these outlines. But where's the evidence for that? That's the real question. Well, as you see on my screen here, Lawrence Krauss was previously canceled. He is a part of cancel culture as a victim of it. He is a celebrity atheist, physicist, brilliant physicist, and was targeted by cancel culture because he hit on girls and women, I guess. They were over 18, He's also married from what I understand. So it's kind of a grossness, I guess you could say. But either way, this guy was canceled by them because he dared to be a straight white male. So what are the things that are required to be an ideology? That's, I think, the most important core aspect of this discussion. Well, they have their own inquisitors. We demand. They're Twitterati. They have enforcers. These enforcers work in the media. They have taken over positions called journalists when they're not, and they're activists. And these activists are their inquisition. They hunt down people, they track them down, they dig into their past, they find something that does not align with their puritarian values, and smears that person publicly to the point where nobody wants to deal with them. The unfortunate problem is that most everybody aligns with this ideological position, because if they don't, the inquisitors, the gatekeepers, the moral police, as they're also called, will come for them too. Therein lies the problem. You have a bunch of bullies running around, pushing people into these positions, and everybody seems to think that they're just going to go away if they succumb to the bullies. Have they? Have they gone away? What happens when you succumb to the bullies? They demand more power, do they not? If you allow somebody to bully you for so long, like I said in the we demand thing, these people are bullies. They demand things of you. What happens when you give in to their demands? Does a blackmailer stop blackmailing you when you pay them the first time? Or do they continue and then ask for more until you have nothing left to give? And then they just let out the information anyways and destroy the rest of you. How does that work? In a couple of the other videos that I had, I talked about the narrative fallacy. Well, they only paint half the picture. That's their activism. They only show you half of what's going on. Everybody takes that half because, as it's said, a lie will travel halfway around the world or full way around the world before the truth ever straps on its shoes. Well, the only way you can get ahead of these people is tell the truth first before they're able to lie. How is it that when you're on the defensive, no one seems to do that? And why? Why do they not defend themselves when they have the opportunity to do so? Where is that possibility? Where is that capability in anything that we do? Is that even something that we admonish? So Lawrence Krauss has said why identity politics should be kept out of science. The problem is, it's already in science. I don't think he realizes this. He'd love to keep it out of the STEM field, the science, technology, engineering, and math. Physics, for example. Too late. They've infiltrated biology. Tell me if you guys remember this. Jordan Peterson was in a heap load of trouble. And when he first started going through this, he had an interview. This is what was said.
And Nicholas, this is where I want to bring you into the discussion because you teach this. You teach trans studies. So if you would, give us a brief primer on so many gender identities that, in your view, require non-traditional pronouns.
Basically, it's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. And I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want, but in the interest of time, I won't. So that's a very popular misconception. So,
do you see what was said there? He could go into it if you'd like, but for the sake of time, he'd rather not. Why? Why would he not? It was never pressed further, except for when Jordan Peterson said, "You said what now?" "Oh, okay." And then it was dropped. It was never discussed. His point was a non-starter because he's lying. The trans activism with the thing that Sargon just covered, with the lady that's like, "Oh my God, J.K. Rowling is such a transphobe because she says biology exists and these chromosomes are a thing," and then refers to Riley Dennis, who says that a lot because that person claims to be trans, wants to be trans, claims to be transitioning, but really isn't. Of course, he, whatever, went through some surgeries, but this person also demands respect, to which I say, fuck you, I'm not giving you respect. That's something that earned, not given. You can demand, going back to we demand, it all the time. You can kiss my ass if you think you can demand that of me. It's not going to happen. Respect is something that's earned, not given. At any rate, so we get back to that. We got this thing up here. What do you think, then, with the narrative fallacy and the point I was pointing out with Black Lives Matter, which is also an identitarian Marxist philosophy, what do you think they think? Coupling it with the science, coupling it with biology. Well, there's actually a separate movement from Black Lives Matter as far as the organization goes that's very much more outspoken, because Black Lives Matter doesn't come out and say it, although in their manifesto and their About Us, they want the destruction of the nuclear family. They don't think it's appropriate. They go down the LGBTQ route and how every one of those identities is sacred, as if it's a indication of your character in any way, shape, or form. But let's look at these other guys. This is ML or M4BL.org. This is Movement for Black Lives, formed in 2014. Well, they're abolitionists, meaning that they want nothing to do with anything about America. They want to transform the radical realignment of power, meaning that they want the power, and the other organizations they don't agree with should not have power. They want to build kinship, meaning they want more black people to have more power. And finally, anti-capitalists. What's the opposite of capitalism? Socialism. Do you need to say anything else beyond this? This is the Marxist philosophy. Cultural Marxism was tried to be erased as a conspiracy theory, but Marxism, the philosophy of power dynamics, of oppress and oppressor, applied to race, looks like this. So in my theory, I would say that the power dynamics that they think exist don't. No, I don't want to turn on carrot browsing. Go away. But what they align and want is those power dynamics based on what you are, not who you are.
I have to admit, it always comes to the same thing.
So what do you think that means? What do you think that means in this whole grand scheme of things? That these people demand and want power. That they create one-sided arguments against things that don't defend themselves, like systems. That they point to people that may be and sometimes are racist and claim the system they work in is racist, not the people or the individuals they're pointing at. That's because they think in groups. They think in what people are and not who they are. They base their entire reality on your identity, not your character. So when you piece those things together, the core foundation principle behind their philosophy, if you will, is the fact that it matters not who you are. It only matters what you are. And your power is directly relational to what you are, not who you are. That power dynamic that they want to destroy is a figment of their imagination. It is their, what would you call it in Christian terms? Their sin, their struggle. It's their original sin, I guess. The Mormons used to have it that God cursed the skin of people based on varying degrees of how they hated Jews or something like that. I can't remember the full story, but I know that they used to believe that blacks were cursed by God, quite literally. And it was, well, and the lighter your skin was, the less cursed you were. And if you prayed hard enough and paid your tithing and all that shit, you could too become white. And there were some people that actually believed that shit. Natives, Samoans, Tongans, where I grew up in Utah. There are a lot of them there. Pacific Islanders, and even some black people and whatnot that lived there in Utah and raised Mormon. They believe this shit. Completely fucking racist. But I guess that doesn't matter. I think the most important thing you should take out of this, and the reason why you'll never get through to them on a philosophical or even a normal conversational level, is because they don't think like you. They're not rational. They're going on belief. They're going on faith. They believe these power dynamics exist because the groups exist, and therefore they can point to anecdotal evidence, which actually should never be called evidence, to be honest. You point to anecdotes and then say, see, look at this, we're right. While they ignore the 1,000+ cases that show that they are not right. They only look at the things that confirm their biases. And I did cover this a little bit, what was it, yesterday? Where it was my last video, where I talked about how facts don't matter. Facts don't matter to these people because what they have done is they've found facts that align to their stuff. Which brings me back to Lawrence Krauss and his get your ass out of my STEM field thing. Well, they own that field. Do you know why they own that field? Because they have insurrectionally put themselves into positions of power within that field. They are the gatekeepers. They are the people that own the journals. They are the people that do the peer reviews. In some cases, you can get by without having to worry about it. But I have seen instances where they said, well, you didn't mention diversity and you didn't mention inclusion in your leadership study, so therefore we're going to throw it out. When your study had nothing to do with either of those subjects. The whole idea that we have to adhere to a diversity quota or diversity in general, actually I find quite offensive. Unless you're talking about diversity of thought, diversity of different fields of expertise. Fortunately, I work for a company that still says diversity is this, but we have a executive leader who constantly preaches the opposite. I don't particularly like him, I have to say, just based on what he's said. I don't agree. And the more I've read about it, the less I find his position enthralling, to say the least. Inclusion is another thing that annoys the living shit out of me. What you are has no bearing or basis on what you can accomplish or who you are. Therefore, why do I have to include the gay person when they know nothing about the field or expertise of what we're talking about? What is the point? Should I include them just because they're gay? That makes no sense. What if they're absolutely useless? They're not able to solve the problem. They have no idea what the hell we're talking about. They have zero expertise in that field. You want me to just include them because they're the gay, or they're the black, or they're the white, or they're the insert race or gender here? That makes no damn sense. You're never going to solve anything if you continue like that. The government's doing the same thing. It's the same philosophy. I think it aligns to the Mormons. Ironically, their God cursed their skin. The blacker you are, the more cursed you are. In this religion, the whiter you are, the more privileged you are. That is their word for sin. Privileged. Despite your lived experiences, and that doesn't matter, it's your group lived experiences. So if we're going to live in tribal means, according to them, then maybe we should. And that's not going to end up very well for anybody else, because then we could hoard all the technology and manners and everything that we have done and exclude everybody else based on the color of their skin, including access to entry to countries, resources, and what have you. Y'all are going to be screwed. Is that really something you want to go down? But that doesn't matter, because it really doesn't matter of what you are, only who you are. So to put a nice little bow on it with the council culture, the Lawrence Krauss story, where he's decided, keep your identity politics out of STEM, it's too late. They own and are trying to actively destroy biology. As you heard in the segment I put in a little bit ago, biological sex isn't what you think it is. Hell, we even had Bill Nye the Science Guy come out and do this weird fucking thing about XY, XZ chromosomes and gender is on a spectrum and so is sex. And then they tried to say that, genetic defects, syndromes, are in fact new genders. No, they're not. They're syndromes for a reason. They're defects. That doesn't make the person less a person. It just means they got something they can't help because it is an imperfect genetical system with flaws. Biology is not perfect. It tries to adapt and evolve. And 99.99% of the evolutions are fuck-ups. Ask any biologist. Some of those evolutionary attempts, genetic defects or what have you, end up failing and dying. Everything that has survived to this date, to this point on this planet, are the survivors, are the adaptations that have helped, not hindered. Slow, gradual adaptations. But they've already infected biology. The rest is just going to come. And all they have to do is start in with the you need more diversity in this field because reasons. To which I'm going to pose one last question. How are you going to achieve your goal? Identitarians, how are you going to achieve it? If personal choice is something you don't like, because you are authoritarians, you demand things, remember? You tell people what to do. You demand your stuff. Then you must therefore necessarily demand of the people you're trying to help. You're going to have to demand they go into the fields you want them to. You're going to have to demand they go into STEM. You're going to have to demand that women go and do this, despite having zero aptitude and zero interest. They, in fact, don't want to go into that field. They have no fucking interest in that field, but you're going to have to force them. That means you're wanting an engineered society. Engineered in the way that you are going to do this job, period. And if you don't like it, sucks to be you. Guess who else tried that? Stalin. If anybody would have bothered to read the Gulag Archipelago, you would know that he tried to engineer a society where they would have more engineers, more civil engineers, more this, that, and the other. And he'd put people in that position because they just grab a bunch of people and said, you're now doing this job. Despite the ones that are already doing that job, being specialized in that job and actually loving their field, those people were put in the gulag. They were put on tenors, as they called it, 10 years imprisonment and torture. If you survived, great. If not, sucks to be you. But in reality, what ended up happening is 90% of those people died. So they put new engineers in there, and everything they built fell apart. Quite literally fell apart. People died because of their engineering failures. That is the road that these identitarians want to head down. We want more women in STEM. Are they good at it? Who cares? Put the women in there. We want 50-50 representation. We need more people in power in this position. And they need to be women, and they need to be people of color. Colored people. Different races. Whatever the fuck you want to call it. You want to push those people into those positions, period. Correct? What if they're not interested? What then? Well then, your only alternative is to do it by force. Now you know why this position is the position I take. Force is not necessary. Encouragement is necessary. But encouragement to do what you pursue, not encouragement to do what you tell them to. The difference between the position I hold and everybody else is I don't like the bullies. Anyways, I hope I kind of wove all those things together for you. Outlined why Lawrence Krauss is living a pipe dream and really just wants these people to stay out of STEM. The response has been, go fuck yourself. What's interesting as well is he runs a Facebook channel. I said a few things on those, and bunch of people left the moment he said this stuff. Bunch of people. They're like, oh my God, you bigot. I already knew you were a bad person and a bigot, but man, this just really is just too much. I'm like, fuck you. Who cares what you think? You're a pathetic identitarian anyways. Up next, I have a few ideas. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, share, subscribe. Please share it. Push it out to other people if you thought this was good. I can't be relying on those with a bigger YouTube following to help me out for too long. And YouTube just doesn't promote my stuff at all. I've had zero growth because of them for ages. And it's annoying, quite to say the least. No one can find my videos. So I have to rely on you, my subscribers, to push this out and share it with other people. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Because of my gung fu, I've been promoted to a very high position.